Greatest honors in my life was in 2013 at the inauguration of the second term of Barack Obama. Martin Luther King III and I was coming out of the church that day, and I looked and saw Ellie Wiesel. And I walked over and he says, Reverend Sharpton, he said, let's take a picture. That picture hangs in my office. Because the pain of Wiesel matches the pain of all of us. And if we can't bond through our pain, then how are we worthy of the pain being relieved? You can't fight for anybody if you don't fight for everybody. I cannot fight for black rights if I don't fight for Jewish rights and other rights, because then it becomes a matter of self-engagement and self-aggrandizement rather than fighting for humanity. And that is why what happens tonight is important. As Robert so eloquently said, there's 2 people or 2 million people. You be one of the 2, because we are in a time now that they're scapegoating all of us. Isn't it interesting that the racists and the anti-Semites and the white supremacists know us better than we do? Because they come after all of us together. They marched in Virginia and Charlottesville saying Jews will not replace us. They were there because they wanted to save a statue of Robert E. Lee, who represented the Confederate Army, to enslave us. They see us more together than we see ourselves. They understand that we are what will threaten white supremacists and threaten neo-Nazism. And we can't let anybody, I don't care how popular they are, condemn any of us without all of us standing up. It's easy for blacks to stand up for racism. It's easy for Jews to stand up for anti-Semitism. But if you're going to really be a leader, you got to speak as a black against anti-Semitism and anti-Semites, and you got to speak as a Jew against racism. Otherwise, you're a moral fraud. It's time for us to stop doing what is easy. People that did things that are hard are the ones that shaped a better world. People that took on what is not comfortable. You've got to get out your comfort zone. We've become too comfortable. We are normalizing people shooting and killing. When they killed this young white supremacist, killed 10 blacks in Buffalo earlier this year, I did 2 of the eulogies. On the way to the church, I called the head of ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt, and said, they attacked 2 synagogues this year. Now they shot 10 blacks. We need to have a hate summit. And we did at the White House. And we need to not just have a ceremony and the president talk. We need to get in the trenches together. We need to stand together and take the attacks. Yes, there are going to be some in the Jewish community that attack you for me being here. There'll be some in the black community that'll say, what are you doing? And that only confirms what we're doing is right. Because if you do not get attacked for taking a side, it's because you didn't take a side.
All right.
They tell the story about Martin Luther King and the Nobel Prize, but they don't tell you when he first started. They indicted him for income tax evasion in Montgomery. That's not in the bios. They call him a crook. He had to first prove he wasn't a crook. Now everybody, Martin Luther King Day, I have a dream. But what about when they dragged him up them stairs to tax court in Montgomery, Alabama in 1957? But because he could take it, he became this great man. Heschel, what he suffered, and many others. You cannot glorify your way to being great. You have to suffer your way to being great. And if you're not willing to pay the price, then you'll never get the reward, and you don't deserve it. And we must all, as we celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas, those of us that are Jewish or Christian, one thing we share is the Torah. There's a story in the Bible of when Moses had led the children of Israel out of bondage, and they were roaming in the wilderness for 40 years, lost because they did not follow the principles and values of what brought them out of bondage. They forgot the values. The problem Moses had, and the problem we have, is that Moses led the children out of Egypt, but he didn't get to Egypt out the children, because they started worshiping graven images and trinkets. And that's not what delivered them out of bondage. And we must remember the values of Abraham, Joshua, Heschel, the values of Martin Luther King. We didn't get out of bondage getting big titles and big names. We got there because of people with no titles paid a price and laid down their bodies so we'd have a bridge to walk across. And if we forget that, we're going to be wandering in the wilderness. What are we doing now? Engaging Reverend Tillett in, I thought I saw Reverend Tillett. Reverend Tillett, we're engaging in wilderness talk. Taking shots at each other, wilderness talk. Acting like, well, I can't talk about that because he's a popular artist. That's wilderness talk. We need to come out of the wilderness. And the only way we're going to get to the promised land is we're going to have to get there together. Because it was not promised to those that were cowards and those that were fearful. One of the stories of Moses is that when there was a drought and Moses called on God to bring the waters, and God told Moses, just go and I'll show you water. He showed the water. And then he said, speak to the rock and I will show the people who want water. He said, just speak to the rock and I will bring the waters. Moses, like many of us that are too political to do what is right, he did not want to speak to the rock. He said, well, the people, it won't look right. And he struck the rock. And God punished him. Why? Because he didn't do what he told him to do. I come tonight to tell you, no matter how unpopular it is, no matter how controversial it is, no matter who don't like it, no matter who gets on their blog, speak to the rock. Speak to this anti-Semitism. Speak to this racism. It's going to be uncomfortable. Some of your friends are going to ask you what you're doing. Speak to the rock. And if we speak to the rock, the floods of harmony and justice will come again. Because only when those that have the nerve to do God's will and do what we can do jointly. So when we light up together, we must not only light up in the name of Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, we must light in ourselves. There's a song that we sing in the black church that I'm sure Robert's mother sung many times. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. As we light candles, let your light shine. Walk out of here being a light in the darkness. Wherever you go and whoever you encounter, let your light shine. Because one light curses the darkness. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Val, for those very brave words, and God bless you. We're going to keep on moving. We're going to do the menorah lighting now. We have more music. We have phenomenal speakers. We're right in the middle of the program. It's time to do exactly what we said we were going to do. When Alicia said to me that we should do a special program for African Americans and Jews, and Robert, here we are, beyond the words, action in our original vision. Elie Wiesel has two grandchildren. One of them, Nova, is going to light the menorah with us, and they are also going to sing all of the blessings. So Nova, please come forward. And I wanted to ask, please,